we can have meetings, then everything will be digital?
Yes. Well, not necessarily everything. Somebody did mention that we can get together in groups of 5.
Mm-hmm.
So, with masks and distancing and small group. I think that was you, David, that had suggested that. David Powers. You're on mute.
Microphone off. Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, there's David Powers. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
So if you guys can, just send a spontaneous invitation, like maybe going to Manitou or Riverfront Park or Corbin Park or anywhere.
Or we could go to
Burrito.
or we could go to Idaho and meet just as normal.
No thanks. Oh, I'm a Washingtonian.
I'm with you, Lynn.
So picture night's going to be digital?
Yes, print night will be digital. The only difference will be if we get to have salon or some physical displays in the spring, then those pictures that you enter in print night will be eligible to be displayed as prints. So you might want to prepare them in that kind of a format, the size that you want and the processing that you want for print.
Lynn, are we still going to go with the 4 prints, or will we just do 2?
That's a good question. We changed it to 4 so to encourage everybody to have lots of prints for salon, and I don't want to overwhelm any judges, but
Lynn, we changed it either last year or the year before to 2.
Right.
We changed it back at the end of the year.
Yeah,
Right.
it's been 2 for a while now.
Yep.
no, didn't we change it to 4 again?
At the end of last year, yes.
It was suggested, but I don't think it was solved.
It was voted on by the board, though.
Yes.
And the board decided to do it, right?
Yes.
We, the members, didn't hear about it.
It's in the minutes. Well, nobody hears much of anything.
I think we were going to announce it.
We're going to announce it in some meeting that never happened.
How many digitals do we have tonight?
We have 62 tonight.
Wow.
60?
Wow.
62.
Whoa.
62?
Let David get started.
Oh yeah, we better start.
It just seems to me like if we're having 60 tonight, we'll at least have 60 on print night. It'll be about the same.
Yeah.
So maybe we don't want 4.
I think we shouldn't do 4 while we're still doing digital, but if we actually start doing prints again at some point, then maybe go to the 4 then.
Yeah, we can decide that as in our next board meeting in the next few days and let everybody know. But I'm with David right now that if we did 4 prints, theoretical prints, we might never have an end to a meeting.
Absolutely correct.
Okay, so Dennis and David, shall we turn it over to you?
Okay.
Dennis, first I'm going to mute everybody.
Mute everybody and then unmute the 2 of us. And then meanwhile, David, you can go ahead and share your screen.
Okay, so we'll see if this works.
Piece of cake.
So Dennis, you and David can unmute yourselves.
I just unmuted myself.
Yep. And David, Sams, you need to unmute yourself.
It's in the upper right, should be. Well, lower left.
Down at the bottom.
Lower
David,
left. Lower left. Where it says
the
mute.
lower left.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Okay, so now you want to share your screen?
Okay. So
Okay, now-
can you see my Lightroom screen here?
We can see your Lightroom screen, and everybody, you could minimize the talking heads. Okay, so our first entry is blushing
Okay.
in digital general color. Go ahead.
So this one I scored 3 for composition, 4 for impact, and 4 for technique. I am finding this this bright component thing, you know, from the grain in the sunlight in the upper right corner, really distracting from the overall feel of this. Is why I didn't give it better than just good composition. That's really the only thing that bothers me about it. I like the idea, and I think it's technically executed well.
Okay, Blushing by Lori Pence, 11 points. Next entry is Buildings in Blue.
Okay, this image really appeals to me. I scored this 4, 4, and 4. I like the monochromatic palette that this has. I like the striking composition. The design of it goes very nicely vertical right here, just off center, and then everything converges in the top. But this area right here I find particularly appealing in the reflection on this glass building. Okay.
Okay, Buildings in Blue by Barbara Murray, 12 points.
Okay.
Next we have Cool Barn.
This one I scored 3 for composition. It's a good, strong composition, but I didn't find anything to elevate it above good. Scored it 4 points for impact and 5 points for technique. I think this is presented as an outstanding photographic quality to this image. It just feels really well executed, and it's quite a striking barn.
Cool Barn by Steve Whitaker, 12 points. Next is COVID-19 Stranded Cruise Ships.
Okay, I scored this 3 for composition, 4 for impact, and 4 for technique. I think it's done really quite well. The light is remarkable. It's just the sunlight illuminates these ships. It's a pretty straightforward composition, which is fine. I think it has good impact, and technically it's done very well.
COVID-19 Stranded Cruise Ships by Tony Herpel, 11 points. David, do you mind, do you want to make it a full screen and take out those the sections on your Lightroom? Can you do that?
The gray background, you mean?
Well, no, the sections on the left and the right and the bottom. So make it a full screen.
Well, I've got it in slideshow modes. It's full screen as it'll go for me. I can't see what you're seeing. All I see is my. Let me see if I can see what you're seeing. No.
Can you do the shift tab?
Well, let me get.
There you go. Now.
Well, that's weird because I had put it in slideshow mode here, and when I hit play, it removes everything else. And all I'm seeing now is a gray background around the edges of the image and just the image, no other tools or, but that's
Yeah.
not showing up on your screen.
No, the panels, the left and the right panels of Lightroom are showing up, as well as the bottom panel. There you go. Now it's disappeared. That's better.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you still see the bottom panel?
We still see the bottom.
I don't know if there's a way I can hide that or.
That's all right. This is a lot better.
Okay.
So, okay. So next is Ford.
Okay, Ford, I scored 2 for composition, 3 for impact, and 3 for technique. Compositionally, some things bother me about this. And they're just little details, but like there's a white angled line coming down the edge. It doesn't even make a white line all the way down the edge. And then on the it's like the whole image is just slightly canted. And then we have a little white distraction right up here at the top. Maybe if I take this over to develop for a second. And now I can't see my tools. But anyway, if this were to crop a little bit at the top, I think it would be improved. Impact is pretty good. And as far as the technique, I think maybe somewhat of that may be deliberate. It's pushed to almost a posterized look, but that actually works pretty well for this. So I wouldn't say it's completely unsuccessful from a technical standpoint. Pretty good.
Ford by Catherine Alexander, 8 points. Next is Gears.
Okay, this one I scored 4, 4, and 4. I find this quite satisfying. Real nice composition with a diagonal line going here, good interaction between these 2 gears. They're not actually engaged, but still they work together well. Lots of patina to this. Really nothing distracting, and the presentation's good.
Gears by John Klikas, 12 points. Next entry is also Gears.
Okay, I've actually got to do something here. I was looking at this one and I've gone in and darkened this center down a little bit, so I need to come over here and remove that effect. If I can get to my tool to do it here. Let's see. You should be able to find, let me bring the tab this. That's really interesting. There we go. Now I can do it. Let me just remove what I had altered here and looking at that. One of my main, well, let me tell you what I scored at 3, 3, and 3. And to me, this center is really distracting from the main interest, which is these gears, their interaction. And what I had done here was just put an adjustment, a radial adjustment on here, and then remove the effect with the eraser around the edges so that it doesn't have any effect on the gears, but just darkens that center. And to me, that makes a huge difference of changing the emphasis into the image itself. Is that screen still displaying okay, Dennis?
Now we have your panels. There you go. Now it's gone.
Better. Okay. I just needed to get rid of that. It was one I had looked at, just something that I wanted to talk about. Anyway, 3, 3, and 3 on that one.
Gears by Don Burnell, 9 points. Next is, I don't know how to pronounce this, Heseta Head Lighthouse.
I say Hesita, but
Hesita?
I'm
Okay.
not sure that's right. I've been there, and it's a wonderful place to photograph. And this is really quite a remarkable photograph of the scene. They've got light, or have turned on digitally the light in the lighthouse, one of the two. Either way, it looks great the way it's been done. Scored this 4, 4, and 4. I think everything here is above average. Technically, I think the color balance may be a little bit on the cool side, but certainly not enough to be a big problem. Nice straight horizon, strong composition, and very pleasing image.
Hesita Head Lighthouse by Colleen Bailey, 12 points. Lord and Master.
Okay, this one I scored 4, 5, and 5. Compositionally, it's a little busy, and what you could do to change it with the arrangement of the animals the way they were when you took the picture, I really have no idea. Possibly cropping this one on the right completely out, but then that would leave this guy right up against the edge, so that's not so desirable either. But the impact on this is excellent, and I think technically it's executed to perfection. It's beautifully photographed.
Lord and Master by Maxie Adams, 14 points. Woohoo!
Good job, Maxie.
All right, so next we have Plain and Simple.
Okay, well, this one I scored 3, 3, and 3. I think it's good, but for me, it doesn't really rise above that. The composition is good, and it has reasonable impact. Technically, I think the highlights are a little flattened out. I do like the starkness of the black background, and the overall contrast of the leaves is working well. There's some out of focus here right in the foreground, so maybe a little more depth of field would have been in order.
Okay, Plain and Simple by Nancy Wagner, 9 points.
Okay, Pronghorn, I scored, oh, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, Pronghorn, Look Back.
Scored this one 3, 4, and 4. The composition is okay. I probably would have gone for something even more square and taken a little more off the right. Possibly right up close to this plant, which I do like. I like the shape of this, works well. The flat light isn't the best for this, but it's pretty good. Sometimes, let me sneak back in here and just try something real quick. Let me bring up the radial tool here. And what I'll do is I'll set the, oh, whoops, I want to do that. I want the radial tool. And I'll set the exposure up maybe just about 0.25. That's 0.35, but it's close. And I'll need to invert that so it's on the inside. And just bring the main part of the face up just a little bit and see if that doesn't just make a pretty dramatic improvement, and yet you really don't notice that it's been dodged a little bit right there in the face. Let me delete that again. It's subtle, but it would make quite an improvement in the image. So it was 3, 4, and 4 is how I scored this. So it's a very remarkable image, good photograph.
Pronghorn Look Back by Steve Shining, 11 points. Show Off.
Okay, I scored this one 4, 5, and 5. It's a pretty straightforward composition, so maybe it doesn't elevate it to the maximum score for composition, but it's extremely striking and technically superb. It's crisp and beautiful.
Show Off by Laurie Carlton Smith, 14 points.
We get to clap.
Next is 6 Feet Apart.
Oh, Jesus.
Okay,
Sister.
this I scored 3, 3, and 3. It's a good photograph, kind of has a snapshot quality to it. I think it gets the idea that the photographer is trying to produce across. It's a good image.
6 Feet Apart by Gene Alleman, 9 points. Tawny Frogmouth.
Frogmouth?
Yeah, that was the title, Frogmouth. I've never seen this creature before. This is quite a remarkable image. I scored this 4, 5, and 5. It's a strong composition. Again, the impact of it is very strong, and technically it's done superbly well. Beautifully exposed and crisp
Is that Dan?
where it needs to be.
Tawny Frogmouth by Evelyn Georgeson, 14 points. Textured Salt Flats.
Okay, this one I scored 5 for composition, 5 for impact, and 4 for technique. To me, the only thing that I would like to see is a little more richness in the clouds in terms of tonal value. And I think the information is there. I looked at the tonal separation up there, and I think it could have been brought out just a little more. That's the only thing I think would improve this really remarkable photograph.
I'm missing 2 pictures.
Textured Salt Flats by Evelyn Georgeson, 14 points. Next is The Parish.
Okay, this I scored 3, 4, and 3. I think the composition is good. I would somehow like to see the figure on the far left a little more separated from things. You kind of come to that figure a little bit late in viewing it. I gave it 4 for impact just because it kind of grabs you as it pops up on the screen. Technically, I would like to see more of the highlight detail, and I understand this is a very contrasty situation and tricky to photograph so that the highlight details show through. It has a nice feeling to it, so, you know, a gin and tonic sounds pretty good right now.
Okay.
But I like the way this looks.
The Parish by Butch Shop, 10 points. Total Concentration.
Okay, I scored this 4, 5, and 4. It's very well composed. It has wonderful impact, and technically I think it's done extremely well. there may be a little bit of over darkening in the background, which helps bring the viewer forward. And I think it would have been good to balance it, maybe a little less darkening up here and a little bit of darkening leading from the foreground back into the subject as ways to improve it a little bit. But really excellent action picture.
Total concentration by Maxie Adams, 13 points. Our last entry for Digital General is Whiskey and Spurs.
Somebody trying to give me a message? This, I scored 4, 5, and 5. The composition, I think, is very good. The one thing that I find a little odd about this image is the whiskey bottle seems to float behind the table, and I'm not sure if it's supposed to be sitting on a stool behind the table or exactly what is going on there, but it almost appears, and maybe the table is, just now that I'm really studying this, the table is really, really blending into the background somehow. Maybe that gives that illusion. Everything else about this is well lit. I like the blue light coming across and putting some highlights on the spurs here on the brim of the hat. That's a nice touch. And then these colors, blue and orange together, then work really well together with the purple, which we've got the purple going on in the fabric and then also in the background. It creates a really nice frame for the whiskey bottle. The color in the whiskey bottle looks great. I think this is an excellent image.
Whiskey and Spurs by Terry Hamilton, 14 points.
Woohoo!
Okay, so now we move on to, we have one single entry in the Digital General monochrome.
Where'd you get all those things?
That when we're still living in Italy.
And
Got those from.
okay, would everybody please mute themselves? So, okay, our lone monochrome entry is Fagel Tractor.
Okay, that must be the brand name of it. I scored this 3, 4, and 4. It's a good composition. It feels a little crowded in the front here to me, and maybe even a little tight on the top, and then with ample room at the bottom. But it works okay. It's a remarkable machine. And so I think it has good impact because of the contrast the photographer used, and the tonal distribution in this as a monochrome print, I think, is excellent.
Okay, Fagel Tractor by Don Burnell, 11 points. Okay, I have a question for everybody. Are we going to take a break tonight or not?
No.
No breaks? We just head on through?
Keep going, Dennis.
Okay. All right, so we move on to After the Rain. We are now in digital subject color. And our first entry is After the Rain.
Okay, I scored After the Rain 4, 4, and 4. I think it's a very good composition. This might be an image that you would like better if you flipped it horizontally so that it read from left to right rather than from right to left. Everything wants to draw from the right side up to the left. And I think if you just flipped it over, that would be an improvement personally. And our subject is texture, and I think that's working very well in this image.
After the Rain by Gene Alleman, 12 points.
Is it technically just texture as a subject or texture and patterns?
Texture, no
Just-
no patterns.
just
Just
texture.
texture.
Okay. Okay.
All your dreams are on their way.
Okay. This one I scored 2, 2, and 2. Spent quite a bit of time looking at it, and I just can't settle into something that really draws me in. There are a few little places in here where there's something pretty interesting to look at. This image might serve well as something to decorate a space where it's not going to be distracting or something like that. It's an extremely shallow depth of field, just a very narrow band here in the foreground that's really sharp, and highlights are completely blown off of this. And I'm not sure what I make of these white corners. That to me not really quite working.
All your dreams are on their way by Lynn Nordhagen, 6 points. Autumn leaves.
Okay, well, this one I also scored 2, 2, and 2. I'm not even sure it really falls into the category of texture. It's more of a pattern of leaves than a texture to my eye. And I really don't find, I mean, there's one leaf here that kind of draws in, but it's out of focus. And a couple over here a little bit. From a technical standpoint, it looks like a scan of a transparency because I see what look like dirt spots that are actually really sharp in several places. So I'm not sure if that's what was the case. It doesn't look like sensor spots from a digital image.
Autumn Leaves by Butch Shop, 6 points.
Okay.
Heirloom.
This one I scored 3, 3, and 3. I think this works pretty well. It's a good composition. Reasonably good impact. I think the eye gets drawn a little excessively to this bright glass compared to what the main subject is. And the depth of field on the main subject is pretty shallow. We're really pretty strongly out of focus back here, and we're actually starting to drift out of focus at the very nearest point on the skin. So I think a little more depth of field would have been beneficial here.
Heirloom by John McLaughlin, 9 points. Hoodoos.
Okay, well, this one I scored 4, 5, and 4. I think the composition is very strong. The impact, this image just grabbed me as soon as it came on the screen. And then I sat and looked at it for quite some time and it just wouldn't let go. And matter of fact, it's still working really well. It looks to me like someone's photographed some paint drippings or something that's been running and then turned the image upside down because everything seems to be flowing against gravity. But you really don't think about that much looking at it. It looks like some kind of fairy tale fantasy image, and yet it's really quite abstract, and I find this delightful.
Hoodoos by Tim Lesser, 13 points. I need some paint.
Okay, this I scored 3, 3, and 3. I think everything about it is good, but none of them really rise to extraordinary. It's done quite well, but it's interesting.
I Need Some Paint by Steve Whitaker, 9 points. Ladybug Landing.
Okay, this I scored 4, 4, and 3. I think it's compositionally done very well. It has good impact, and maybe enough to be above average. Technically, it's okay. It looks a little soft, like it was scanned from an analog source. It all appears just a little soft, and I think it would be better served by a real crisp rendition.
Ladybug Landing by Dora Davis, 11 points. Leafy Texture.
Okay, it's another one I struggled with some. I really enjoy looking at this image. I scored it 3, 4, and 3. I think the composition is good. I don't know when these Palouse scenes will stop having a high impact for me. It's probably going to be a while yet. There are a lot of things I really like about this. I think technically it's done reasonably well. It's a pleasing image.
Leafy Texture by David Powers, 10 points. May I?
Okay. I think I have a pretty good idea what the photographer was trying for here. I scored this 2, 2, and 2. There's several things that this picture needs to have improved for it to really come to life. The whole thing is tilted to the side. If you look at the wine glass, it's tilted over so that the right side is higher than the left. The glass has a lot of little droplets and things around the edge that I think would look better had they been cleaned up. There's a general lack of contrast, as if there were some flare or something getting into the camera and making the shadows weaken, especially coming across the top corner here. Let me see if I can just take a moment to give you an idea what I'm talking about. If we let's bring the blacks down just a little and the clarity up a little. See, even just that starts to bring the contrast into the porcelain, or I guess whatever kind of figure that is. And of course, if one my straightening tool. There it is. When we're to straighten that up so the glass was sitting more level, that would be a substantial improvement. Okay, I'll go back to there. Anyway, those are my thoughts on that image. I like your idea. It just needed some improvement in the execution.
May I by Sister Madonna, 6 points. Multiple textures of peacock.
Okay, well, this one I scored 3, 3, and 3. It's a good composition. I don't like the clipping of the feather right here at the top. I find that a little annoying. And the depth of field, of course, this is going to be a challenge anyway. It does give you a second, there's a strong texture of these feathers here, and then this one holds together pretty well. By the time we get back here, it's getting far enough out of focus that we're losing the texture some.
Multiple textures of peacock by Beverly Hardin, 9 points. Must be rough.
Okay, this one I scored 3, 4, and 3. I think the composition is okay, but the impact is quite good. It's a strong subject. It's just that all of this really bright over here on the side is highly distracting, and maybe could have been burned down some and or cropped off.
Must be rough by Lynn Nordhagen, 10 points. Nature's textures.
Okay, I scored this one 3, 3, and 3. It's a decent composition, but there are, I feel like there are a lot of different things competing for my attention, and I'm not really strongly drawn to any one of them. Impact-wise, probably the same issue comes into play. I'm just not really drawn into any one part of the picture. I just kind of end up wandering all over it going, boy, there are a lot of interesting things to look at here. And technically it's good, but I don't think rises above that. You have a kind of a couple of different levels of texture there, the fine textures of the talus that are piled up along the edges, and then the coarser textures of the large rocks.
Nature's Textures by Dorothy Detler, 9 points. On the Fence. Okay, well, this I scored 3, 4, and 3. I think the composition is good. The impact is quite good, and it partly has, I think, to do with just the unusual nature of those grass seed heads, whatever they are. Not one I'm familiar with. And technically it's done quite well. On the Fence by Nancy Wagner, 10 points. Orange Textures.
Okay, this I scored 4, 4, and 4. I think it's composed very well. Maybe has a little more than it needs on the left side for balance, but only slightly. And just a really strong monochromatic image.
Orange Textures by Steve Shining, 12 points. Palouse Textures.
This one I scored 4, 5, and 4. The composition is very good. The impact, I think, is stunning. And technically, it's done very well. It's a simple image, but just holds my attention beautifully. It's gorgeous.
Palouse Textures by David Powers, 13 points.
Prickly reflections.
Okay, this I scored 3, 3, and 3. Just really not quite sure what to make of this. I'm wondering, as I was looking at it originally, I was wondering if a lower camera angle would improve things by making the original image not exactly equal in size to the reflection. I think that's maybe the thing that bothers me about it the most, is that the reflection is identical in size to the source image. And that may be what's bothering me about it. But it seems very static somehow. I guess that's my main thing.
Prickly reflections by Dennis Esep, 9 points. Puerto Vallarta palm.
Okay, this I scored 2, 3, and 2. It's about the texture, and I think there's just too much up in here, and there's some little distracting sunlit highlights here just scattered about that I think they distract from the textural aspect of it. And again, you got some of these going on over here in a really bright corner that I think is distracting as well. It just needs more concentration on the actual subject.
Puerto Vallarta palm by Kim Barbie, 7 points. Revealing.
Okay, I scored this 4, 5, and 4. I think this is extraordinary. I may have underscored it, I'm not sure. But anyway, that's what I did. I really like this picture. I think everything about it is working very, very well.
Revealing by Tamara McGee, 13 points. Rusty Wheel.
Okay, this I scored 4, 4, and 4. I think that everything that on this image is above average. If I were to make a suggestion, once again, unless you're concerned that someone may see that the screw threads would be going backwards, is to flip this left to right, I think might work better. But other than that, I'm very pleased with this picture. Looks great.
Rusty Wheel by John Lepper, 12 points. Scales.
Okay, this one I scored 4, 5, and 5. Compositionally, we're clipping just a little bit, and that's a minor point. Everything else about the balance of the composition looks great. The technical aspects of this are stunning.
Scales by Tony Harpel, 14 points. Shabby Chick.
Okay, this one I scored 3, 4, and 4. The composition I think is working okay. Some of the things that I see as little problems are difficult to deal with. If you're of the nature photography school where you don't alter anything in a natural image, then of course you couldn't remove this distracting white piece sticking up right here.
if you're of the art school, that could go away. I think the color balance may be leaning a little bit toward yellow, just a little bit over warmish. It's quite a striking picture, though.
Shabby Chick by Courtney Litwin, 11 points. Silent Luxury.
Okay. Well, this I scored 3, 3, and 3. Everything is all right on it, but the depth of field for me is quite a bit too shallow. It's really very out of focus by the time you get into this foreground area, and then we're already going way out of focus back here. So unless you were fighting wind, a smaller f-stop probably would have been in order, or some focus stacking. The other thing, there's, and maybe you were in a place where you couldn't touch the plants if they're not your plants, but there's some dirt or something on this leaf that's kind of distracting.
Silent Luxury by John McLaughlin, 9 points. Smooth and Prickly.
Okay, well, this one also scored 3, 3, and 3. It is pretty well out of focus here in the foreground. Nice and sharp back here by the time you get to the petals, but this out of focus foreground I find distracting. And those are really my main concerns about it.
Smooth and Prickly by Robin DeWolf, 9 points. Soft as a Lullaby.
Okay, this I scored 4, 4, and 4. Everything here to me is above average. It's a very strong image and a really good textural study. And I like the presentation. Very satisfying, just very satisfying.
Soft as a Lullaby by Elaine Guidoni, 12 points. Standing Tall.
Okay, well, this is one I spent quite a bit of time mulling over as I scored it. I scored it 3, 4, and 4. I think compositionally it's good. I think the impact is quite high. It grabbed me as it first came up on the screen, but then it holds my attention as I continue to look at it. Technically, it appears to be over sharpened or something. There's a bit of haloing going on around all the edges. And I don't know if that was done very deliberately or a fortunate accident or just what it is. I like the effect for this particular image. Ordinarily, it's something I shun like crazy. But for this particular picture, I feel like it works.
Standing Tall by Robin DeWolf, 11 points. Sunflower Seduction.
Okay, well, this I scored 3, 3, and 3. Everything about it is good, but it's just a very straightforward image of the center of a sunflower. And I just don't find anything that elevates it above being very good.
Sunflower Seduction by Lori Carlton Smith, 9 points. Sweet Slumber.
Okay, this I scored 3, 4, and 3. The composition is good. The impact is, I think, quite high. Probably, to a large extent, the cuteness factor. is a darling image. And I think technically it's done very well.
Sweet Slumber by Dora Davis, 10 points. Texture and Action.
Okay, this I scored 4, 4, and 4. I think the photographer has picked just the right shutter speed to get the balance of motion in the water along with the texture of the water, and particularly since that's your subject for this picture. Also, the textures of the wet rock are delightful. I think everything about this falls into the above average category.
Texture and Action by Dorothy Detler, 12 points. Texture of the Forest.
Okay, this I scored 3, 4, and 4. I found the composition just a little static for my taste, with the main subject of the mushroom right in the middle. I could probably do without any of this out of focus background here and come in and make a stronger picture of just a little closer on the bark and the mushroom, and tighten it up a little bit.
Texture of the Forest by Beverly Hardin, 11 points.
Oh my.
Tribal Chief.
Okay, this I scored 3, 4, and 4. The composition is good and probably what's appropriate for this subject. The impact is quite high. I think primarily for the subject itself. I mean, it's a very impressive subject, and I think technically it's done quite well. Maybe would have liked to see a little more shadow detail in some of these areas, but everything else is working quite well. How it is it's, to me, it's not really a subject of texture. The subject has a lot of textures in it. There's a variety of textures all over the place with the beard, fabric, feathers, and all of these different things. But calling this subject, the subject itself isn't really texture as far as I can see.
Tribal Chief by Alice Garland, 11 points. Two kinds of textures.
Okay, which I assume is the texture of the skin, and then the texture of the background. I'm really trying to figure out what's going on with this image. I scored it 3, 4, and 3. It has pretty good impact. Something is strange about it in that there's really sharp focus right along here in the hat and on this fabric. It's a little bit soft here, and then we get to the background. It almost looks like the background has been replaced from the original picture. I can't categorically say that, but the background and the background may have had a texture effect applied to it, but it seems overly sharp for how it would fit with this subject. And somehow that distracts me. And then this light coming in here by the ear is, for me, is just too bright. Distracts from the rest of the face.
Two Kinds of Textures by Terry Hamilton, 10 points. Velvet and Spikes.
Okay, this I scored 2, 3, and 2. This is a static subject, and yeah, I have very shallow depth of field. I'm getting very out of focus by the time I get back here. It's pretty sharp along the front edge. And I'm just not sure whether I'm supposed to be looking at the very bright, out of focus background, or I just kind of wander back and forth between the dark details in the foreground and this bright background.
Yeah.
Velvet and Spikes by Barbara Murray, 7 points. Then our last entry for subject color is Winter View.
Okay, this I scored 3, 3, and 3. This foreground snow is pretty seriously out of focus, and I think is more distracting than helpful to the composition. The way the image is processed, it's doing something a little strange in these mid-tone values. This snow back here and this ice, these things all look really quite wonderful. And again, for this to be, for the subject to be texture, having this out of focus snow, which shows the texture the best, isn't really working. And I'm not sure, we've got some textures going on in this area here in the water. But once again, for me, it's not really quite a subject of texture. It's a subject that has a lot of texture in it, but that's a little different.
Winter View by Lori Pence, 9 points. So now moving on to our subject monochrome. Our first entry is A Lifetime Exposed.
Okay. Well, this one I scored 5, 5, and 4. I love the composition. It's strong with a very simple subject. I think the impact is superb. And the only thing I would like to see, technically, I would have probably liked to see just a little more smoothness of tonality, including a little more mid-tone. But this is a really striking image for me.
A Lifetime Exposed by Tamara McGee, 14 points. Barking Up the Tree.
Okay, I scored this one 3, 4, and 4. Compositionally, it's pretty dramatic, but maybe just a bit on the static side. It's certainly, excuse me, certainly dramatic. I think it has high impact, and technically I think it's done very well. There's good tonal distribution throughout this. I think it's handled pretty nicely. Might have dodged this area open up in here just a little bit more, and maybe burned in these edges down here at the bottom just a little bit, but
Barking Up the Tree by Dennis Esip, 11 points. Beauty in the Rough.
okay, this scored 3, 4, and 4. Composition is good. There's some distracting brightness right in the corners. And I'm not sure how that could have best been dealt with, but
The impact is very good, above average, and I think the technique, again, as a black and white, processing the tonalities of a black and white image has been done extremely well here.
Beauty in the Rough by Courtney Litwin, 11 points. Beyond Repair.
Okay, this I scored 4, 4, and 4. I think this is above average in every way. Presentation, subject matter, meeting the subject requirements, and it's just a very interesting image.
Beyond Repair by John Lepper, 12 points. Leaf.
Okay, this I scored 3, 3, and 3. It feels a little flat or lacking in weight in the low values. Just a little on the flat side. It's good, but doesn't rise above that for me.
Leaf by John Klikas, 9 points. Let It Rain, Let It Rain.
Okay, well, the first issue for this one for me is this is in the black and white or monochrome section, and I'm seeing green in here. I see a blue pickup truck. I even see what looks like a red taillight. This is fairly monochromatic, but it's a monochromatic color picture as far as I can see. I scored it 3, 2, and 2. The composition is pretty good, but the impact just isn't there for me. And technically, like I say, to me, it's not a black and white picture, not a monochrome image.
Let It Rain by Sister Madonna, 7 points.
Let me just do one thing very quickly here. That's a monochrome image, and this is a color image.
Next entry is Log Cabin.
Okay, this I scored 3, 3, and 3. I think it's done quite well, but I really think this area should have been burned down. Again, if you have no problem with altering things, what I probably might have done is take this side and duplicate it over and use the wood textures here to fill in this bright area over here and make it more balanced. Otherwise, it's pretty strong.
Log Cabin by Kim Barbie, 9 points. Seen Better Days.
Okay, composition I scored 4, impact 4, and technique 3. I really think this needed some balancing in terms of bringing down the brightnesses in this lower left corner to make it fit better with the rest of the image. But very pleasing photograph here. Nice presentation on it as well.
Seen Better Days by Elaine Guidoni, 11 points. Swoosh.
Okay, this is, for me, is really fun. I scored this 4, 4, and 4. I really don't know exactly what I'm looking at here. It looks like a stack of paper or fabric or who knows what. And it's really quite unimportant to me what it is.
It's just very pleasing and certainly fills the bill for the subject. I think this is a wonderfully done abstract image.
Swoosh by Ardella Carroll, 12 points. And our final entry for the evening, The Ways of Water.
Well, for me, this was 5, 5, and 5. There is nothing I dislike about this. It's beautifully composed. Grabbed me the moment it came on the screen and holds on to me. And technically, I think it's just done exquisitely. The texture of that sand is just, you can feel it. It's beautiful.
Okay. The Ways of Water by Tim Lesser, 15 points. Woo. That's it. That's our. So, David, would you like to unshare your screen?
Dennis?
Yes.
This is Catherine Alexander. I submitted another slide for the color texture, and it
Catherine, you're muted.
Oh, I submitted another slide. It's called Outer Space for the color texture. It did show up on the website. I just went there to see if it actually made it up and stuff because I thought it had, but it is there, but it didn't make tonight.
Dennis, you're on mute.
Everybody needs to unmute.
Okay. Catherine, I'll take a look at that and I'll get back to you. So, well, at this point, probably it's a good time to ask for any feedback regarding our first digital Zoom meeting and how we can improve it in our next meeting.
Hey, Dennis, this is Camera.
Yeah.
I have some feedback, and not necessarily feedback. I thought it was fantastic. I really liked the format. Oh man, I'm dropping stuff on the ground. I really liked the format. Sorry, I wasn't prepared to go on camera. But I just wanted to tell everybody that one thing that I was doing with a few of you that I think is cool is that you can chat with each other in the chat window on Zoom during the presentation. So you can say, wow, I really like that composition on that one, or hey, your picture was fantastic.
How do you direct that to just one person? I could see it directed to everybody.
Okay, so in the chat, it says to everyone, and everyone has a drop down for all the members that are in the meeting. So if you click on someone in the meeting, then you can send it directly to them privately. My word of caution from me using it is that when you go to say something to the whole group, you need to change it back to everyone, or it just goes to that person. And if you're looking to find the chat and you're on a computer, when you just hover over Zoom, down at the bottom, right in the middle, it says chat and it opens up in a pop-up window.
Cool. Yeah, I'd like to say thanks to David. Looks like he's still at work and has to drive home. I know he likes to take pictures on the way home, so I hope he has his tripod.
It's pretty dark out there.
Wouldn't be without it.
And I want to say thank you to David too. I really appreciate learning so much about how you think.
Yes. I like the demonstrations on how improvements could be made using Lightroom. That was nice.
Yeah. I thought that was really neat too. That was a cool feature.
Yep.
I liked being able to see the images up close too. I thought that was really neat to be able to really see the detail and what they were talking about. And since we're on thank yous, thank you to Dennis and Lynn and
Totally.
Dorothy for getting this going, and anyone else that behind the scenes got this all set up and going. That was really awesome. Thank you guys.
Yes, it was awesome. Thank
great.
you.
Let me add a thank you to Dennis too for helping me get this set up. This is my first Zoom experience, so.
You're kidding.
You did great.
Wow. You're a
Well,
professional
you did
now.
fantastic.
That's
Yeah, very
amazing.
good, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah.
You're a pro, David.
Very, very nice first meeting on Zoom.
Very good.
I agree.
I have hope. I have hope that we can do this year.
In 2 weeks from tonight, is that correct?
Yes.
Correct.
And the board will be receiving a little meeting notice. I'll give you some choices and you can choose among them. And whoever has the most votes, whichever night has the most votes, will do that.
Sounds good.
How many people do we have on? Is it about 50?
35.
35.
Wow.
It was 37
Yeah, there were
earlier.
36 earlier. Yep, very nice.
Nice for a first, good for a first meeting.
And I get to participate in this.
Yeah.
Hey, Tony.
That's great.
I was going to mention something else about the
in Costa
chat.
Rica.
Another thing that chat can be useful for is if we have guest presenters, I'm assuming maybe we will have guest presenters. They can drop a link in the chat and we can open up like a document or a slideshow or something that they want to share with us, or they can share their screen, but they can share, like if they have a handout that goes with their presentation, they can drop a link to that in the chat and we can click on it and have that downloaded right to our computer. So it's actually kind of a cool feature to use.
And also submit questions to the presenter as well through the chat.
Right. Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
06. Yep.
So Tony, are you in Costa Rica or are you here?
I'm in Costa Rica. Yeah.
You can
You can
tell.
tell by that palm tree.
Just not on the beach.
I'm right next to the palm tree.
He's got 24-hour daylight there. Always sunny.
I'm about to go
What time
swim.
is it? What
I'm
time
about to
is
go
it over
swimming
there?
right over here.
Oh my gosh.
Robin, he said it's about an hour later.
Oh,
That's right.
wow.
It's an hour later. No big deal. Works for me.
Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Thanks, David.
we will carry on. And remember to send me ideas for what you would like to do outside of meetings, outside of our digital and print meetings. We can do any size group and we can do, I don't know, or your imagination is the limit for using this medium. So
Nicely done.
Thank you very much.
thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Night.
Bye.
Night.
Shall we leave? We're leaving?
All right.
Meeting.